When a cruel joke tried to silence her, a poor girl's violin spoke the language of dreams and left everyone in tears. Every school has that one student who is always sitting alone, who doesn't speak much, who is there every day but feels almost invisible. In this school, that student was Mira. She sat on the last bench of her classroom near the window, where no one paid much attention to her. Her uniform was always clean but old. The color had faded because it had been washed too many times. Her shoes had tiny cracks, and her bag had a stitched patch on the side. But Mira never complained. She quietly attended all her classes, took notes, and did whatever the teacher asked. She didn't have any close friends. During lunch breaks, she would sit under the big neem tree near the back wall of the school and eat whatever her mother could pack, sometimes just a dry chapatis with a little pickle, and sometimes just plain rice. There were days when she didn't bring anything, and she would just drink water from the tap and sit quietly, pretending she wasn't hungry. Other children would run around, laugh, share snacks, and show each other funny videos on their phones. Mira didn't even own a phone. Her life was simple but tough. She lived in a small room with her parents and younger brother in a crowded part of the city. Her father worked as a construction laborer. He left home early in the morning with a tiffin box and returned late in the evening, his clothes always dusty. Her mother stitched clothes for people in the neighborhood, sitting in the small corner of their room with a noisy sewing machine that shook the table. Their home had no sofa, no fridge, and the fan above their heads made a strange sound when it turned. But even in that tiny space, there was love, and there was hope. Mira loved music, but not the kind you hear on the radio every day. She had a special love for the sound of the violin. She didn't know where this love came from. Maybe it was from the day she heard a man playing the violin at a temple function. She had stood still that day, surrounded by noise and people. Listening to the soft, emotional sound that came from the strings, something inside her had shifted. She had never heard anything so beautiful before. It was like the music could speak without words, like it understood feelings better than people did after that day. She started noticing violin music in movies, TV shows, and anywhere else she could. Of course, she couldn't afford a violin. Those instruments were expensive, and even buying vegetables was sometimes a struggle for her family. But Mira didn't give up. She kept dreaming. One evening, as she was walking home from the market with her mother, she saw something that made her stop. In a junk shop, hanging between an old guitar and a dusty keyboard, was a violin. It looked broken, its strings loose, and the wood slightly chipped. But to Mira, it looked like a piece of heaven. Her eyes widened. She gently asked the shopkeeper how much it cost. He laughed and said, "It's useless. Take it for 100 if you want." That night, Mira begged her mother to let her buy it. Her mother was hesitant, but she had seen the sparkle in her daughter's eyes. The next day, using money saved from stitching extra blouses, her mother gave her the 100. Mira ran to the shop and brought home her first violin. It was old. It was damaged. But it was hers. There was no one to teach her how to play. No teacher, no lessons, no YouTube videos. But Mira wasn't the kind of girl who gave up easily. She listened to violin music carefully and tried to copy the sound. She figured out how to hold the bow, how to move her fingers, how to create notes. She would sit for hours on the floor, trying again and again, making mistakes, learning slowly at night. When the city became quiet and her brother had gone to sleep, Mira would sit near the window and practice. Her father, tired after a long day, would listen quietly, and her mother, busy folding clothes, would sometimes pause and smile. The music wasn't perfect, but it was getting better. Day by day, she improved. Her fingers became faster, her ears sharper, and her heart poured into every note. At school, no one knew about this secret side of her. She still sat alone, still avoided speaking unless necessary, and still received mocking looks from some students, especially from a group of kids who liked to show off their new things: watches, headphones, and trendy water bottles. They would whisper and laugh whenever Mira walked past. Sometimes they called her names behind her back, but never responded. She didn't let their words enter her heart. She had learned to build a wall inside her, quiet strength that protected her from the cruelty of others. But still, deep inside, it hurt. She wished just once someone would see her for who she really was, not just for her clothes or her silence. The school never focused much on art or music. Most of the time, it was about marks, homework, and exams. But one day, an announcement changed everything. The principal came on the loudspeaker and said that the school would be organizing a hidden talent performance the following week. Every student was encouraged to participate: dance, music, drama, painting, anything they loved. Mira's heart skipped a beat. Her fingers, resting on her notebook, began to twitch. This was her chance. This was the moment she had been waiting for, even if she hadn't known it. But before she could even think of signing up, something happened that made her stomach drop. During lunch break, the group of rich and popular students were sitting together, laughing loudly. One of them, Arav, said, "Let's have some fun. Why not sign up someone unexpected for the talent show?" Others said, like Mira, "Imagine her performing, what a joke." They all laughed. Then, without her knowing, they wrote her name on the registration sheet under the violin solo category. It was meant to be a joke. They expected her to panic, get embarrassed, and maybe even cry. That was their fun. When the teacher read out the list the next day in class, Mira wasn't paying attention at first. But when she heard her name followed by violin performance, she froze. The entire class turned to look at her. Some students started whispering. Others chuckled. Arav and his friends were pretending to look surprised, hiding their laughter behind their notebooks. Mira looked down at her hands. Her throat felt dry. She knew what had happened. She understood it was a prank. They thought she would be too scared to go up on stage, that she would say no, or maybe run away crying. But something inside her said no. She looked up slowly and said, "Yes, I'll perform." The class went quiet. Even the teacher looked surprised. She asked again, "Are you sure, Mira?" Mira nodded, her voice calm. "Yes, ma'am." No one laughed after that, because her eyes were not afraid. They were steady, confident, and filled with something no one had expected: belief. That day, as Mira walked home, the sun felt warmer, the sky looked bluer, and the violin inside her old bag felt heavier, but in a good way. She knew the days ahead would be difficult. She knew people would wait to laugh at her. But she also knew something they didn't. She had been preparing for this moment her whole life. They had written her name as a joke, but the joke was going to be on them, because Mira was not just a poor girl. She was a quiet storm waiting to rise. After Mira said yes to performing in the talent show, the atmosphere in her classroom changed completely. The laughter that had filled the air a moment ago disappeared like smoke. Everyone was quiet, almost confused. The teacher moved on with the list of performers, but Mira's name stayed in everyone's mind. Nobody had expected her to say yes, not even the boys who played the prank. Arav and his friends exchanged strange looks. Their joke had taken an unexpected turn. After class, Mira packed her bag slowly. She could feel the eyes on her, but she didn't look up. As she walked out of the room, two girls giggled behind her back. One of them whispered, "Does she even have a violin? Or will she play it on her broomstick?" The other laughed. Mira heard it, but she kept walking, her steps steady, her heart beating fast. In the hallway, a few boys tried to stop her. Arav smiled and said, "Hey, Mira, that was brave of you. Didn't know you were into music. Can't wait to hear you play." His voice was sweet, but his eyes were full of sarcasm. Mira simply replied, "You'll hear it soon," and walked away without waiting for a response. That evening, when Mira reached home, her mind was full of thoughts. She had never performed in front of people before. Her violin was still broken in places. Strings were old, and sometimes the sound wasn't clear. She'd never taken a single music class. She'd only taught herself by listening and feeling. Was that enough? When her mother saw her face, she knew something had happened. Mira told her everything. About the prank, about the performance, about saying yes. Her mother sat silently for a moment, then took Mira's hand in hers. "Beta," she said softly, "some people laugh because they are empty inside. They think making fun of others will make them feel better. But if you have truth in your heart, no one can make you small. Let them laugh. You play for yourself. Not for them, Mira nodded, but the fear inside her didn't leave. That night, as she opened her violin case, she felt a little shaky. She touched the strings gently. The bow had lost some of its hair. The wood had faded. But the sound still lived in it. She closed her eyes and began to play, slowly at first. Carefully, the notes floated into the room, soft and full of emotion. Her father, who had been lying down after dinner, turned to listen. He didn't say anything, just watched her with pride. Her younger brother peeked from behind the curtain, his eyes wide with wonder. Mother smiled and kept stitching without stopping her hands. Mira practiced for hours. She chose a piece of music that had always touched her heart. It was not a famous song, but one she had heard in a documentary about a child who overcame struggles. The tune was gentle in the beginning. Then it grew louder, stronger, like a person rising after falling many times. It was full of feeling, and she wanted her music to speak to people the way it spoke to her. The next day in school, the gossip started early. Students whispered in the corridors. Did you hear? Mira is going to perform the violin. Some laughed. Some were curious. A few were actually interested. One boy from another class said, I didn't even know she could play. Another girl replied, maybe she can't. Maybe she's just pretending. Mira stayed silent through it all. She had stopped expecting kindness from classmates a long time ago. She knew that, for some people, silence was seen as weakness. But she also knew that sometimes silence could be power. Her plan was simple: practice, improve, and perform with everything she had. In the following days, Mira's focus was unbreakable. Every evening, she came home, did her chores, helped her mother, studied for a while, then practiced her violin late into the night. Her fingers began to hurt from pressing the strings. Small blisters appeared on her fingertips. When her bow started breaking apart, she tied the loose hairs with thread. When one of the strings snapped, her father took her to a small music repair shop and got it fixed with the little money he had saved. Meanwhile, in school, the other participants were excited. Students who were doing dance and singing performances practiced in the auditorium. They showed off their costumes, shared videos of their rehearsals, and talked about how amazing their performances would be. Nobody included Mira. No one asked what she was preparing or if she needed help. She was an outsider in every way. Arav and his friends still joked behind her back. One day during the break, he even said loudly, "Guys, bring tissues for the talent show. Mira's violin might make us cry from laughing too hard." A few laughed, but others didn't. Slowly, something was changing. A few students had noticed that Mira wasn't nervous. She wasn't backing out. She wasn't reacting. That calm confidence began to bother them. They expected her to quit. But she didn't. 2 days before the event, the teacher in charge asked all performers to come for a final check. Everyone had to show what they were planning to do so the order could be decided. Mira brought her violin and waited patiently. One by one, the students performed. There were dancers with glittery outfits, singers with beautiful voices, actors with funny skits. When it was Mira's turn, the room got a little tense. Some students leaned forward, expecting something funny or strange. She walked to the center, adjusted the mic, and took a deep breath. Then she lifted the violin to her shoulder. The first note she played was soft, like a whisper. Then came the next note, and the next. Slowly, the sound filled the room. It was not perfect. There were a few uneven parts. But there was something else: emotion. Her music had pain, hope, and honesty in it. It didn't need words. Her violin told her story of silence, of struggle, of quiet strength. When she finished, the room was quiet for a few seconds. The teacher nodded with a serious expression. "Very good, Mira," she said. A few students clapped politely. Some didn't know how to react. Arav and his group looked confused. It wasn't funny. It wasn't terrible. It was real later. That day, one girl from another class approached Mira during break. Her name was Kavya. She said, "I didn't know you played so well." "You're really good." Mira smiled. A small, but genuine smile. "Thank you," she said. It was the first nice thing someone at school had said to her in years. That night, Mira couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Heart was full of excitement and fear. What if something went wrong on stage? What if the violin string broke? What if she made a mistake? But then, she remembered her mother's words. "You are not doing this for them. You are doing it for yourself." And she knew what she had to do. She got up quietly, picked up her violin, and practiced again. This time, she didn't play to impress anyone. She played for the little girl inside her who used to dream in silence. The girl who had no fancy clothes, no stage, no applause, but had music in her soul. She played for her father who worked in the heat all day, for a mother who had given up her comfort to buy a broken violin, for a brother who looked at her like she was magic. The day of the talent show finally arrived. The school hall was decorated with ribbons, balloons, and a colorful stage. Parents were invited. Teachers were busy managing everything. Students were dressed in shiny costumes, makeup, and glitter. Mira wore her usual clothes. She had no special costume, just her regular white salwar kameez, neatly ironed. Her hair was tied in a simple braid. She carried her violin carefully, like it was a treasure. She sat backstage, waiting for her turn, as the performances began. Dancers performed with energy. Singers got loud applause, and funny skits made everyone laugh. People cheered, clapped, and recorded videos on their phones. Mira watched quietly. Her hands were cold. Her heart was beating fast. She closed her eyes and took deep breaths. Her name was called. It was time. She stood up and walked toward the stage. The hall grew silent as the announcer said, "Next, we have a violin performance by Mira from Class 9. A few people in the audience looked curious. Some students exchanged looks. Mira stepped onto the stage, the light shining bright on her face. She looked at the crowd, then slowly turned to face the mic. She adjusted her violin, lifted the bow, and closed her eyes. And then she began to play. As soon as Mira touched the strings with her bow, the sound of the violin flowed into the air like a soft breeze. The first few notes were quiet, gentle, and full of feeling. The audience, which had been noisy a moment ago, suddenly went silent. Even the small children who were playing in the back stopped to listen. It was as if something magical had begun. Mira had closed her eyes. She was not thinking about the people watching her. She was not thinking about the students who laughed at her, or the ones who expected her to fail. She was thinking about the music, the story she wanted to tell through it, and the emotions hidden in her heart for years. The tune started slowly. It was the sound of a lonely evening, of a girl walking home after school, tired but hopeful. Then it became a little faster, showing the strength inside that girl, the way she kept going, even when no one noticed her. As she moved her bow across the strings, the notes rose and fell like waves in the ocean, sometimes calm, sometimes strong, sometimes sad, and sometimes full of joy. The principal, who had been sitting with the guests, leaned forward in her chair. The music touched her. It wasn't just sound, it was a story. The teachers sat with wide eyes, watching the girl who was always so quiet, who never spoke much in class. Now standing with confidence on stage, playing like a professional. Some of the students who had laughed earlier were now staring at her, completely still, not knowing what to say or think. Even Arav, who had started the whole joke, was sitting frozen. His smile had faded. He looked at his friends, then back at the stage. He could not believe that the same girl he had tried to embarrass was now making the entire hall silent with her music. She wasn't just good, she was amazing. One of the notes hit a little wrong in the middle, but Mira didn't panic. She kept playing, correcting it smoothly. That mistake didn't matter, because her music was not about perfection. It was about emotion. And emotion is always real, even with a few small cracks, as the music reached its high point. Mira played with her eyes still closed, her hands moving like they had their own mind. Her face showed everything: pain, joy, strength, fear, hope. Her entire body became a part of the music. It was like her soul had taken the shape of sound. The final part of her performance was soft again, like the music was saying goodbye. It faded slowly, like the last light of the sun at sunset. When the last note ended, the hall remained quiet for a few seconds. No one moved. No one clapped. It felt like they were still holding their breath. Then someone stood up and began clapping. It was the music teacher. She had tears in her eyes. One by one, the other teachers began to clap. Then the principal. Then some students. And within moments, the entire hall was filled with the sound of loud, heartfelt applause. It was not just polite clapping. It was clapping that said, "You moved us. You surprised us. You won us." Mira opened her eyes slowly and looked around. She had never seen such a scene before. She was used to being invisible, ignored, forgotten. But today she stood at the center of attention, not because of her clothes or background, but because of her talent and hard work. Her hands were shaking slightly, but her heart felt strong. She bowed gently, smiled, and walked off the stage. Backstage, a few students who had never spoken to her before now came up to her. One girl said, "Mira, that was beautiful." "I didn't." "No, you could play like that." Another boy added, "You gave me goosebumps." Seriously. Even the janitor who had been working near the door came and said, "Beta, you made me remember my village. There was a man who played like this there. God bless you." Mira simply smiled and said thank you. She didn't need more words. Later, as the event continued, other performances took place, but something had changed in the room. Everyone seemed more serious, more thoughtful. The show was no longer just fun and laughter. Mira's music had brought something deeper into the air. When the event ended, the principal came on stage to give a short speech. She praised all the performers and thanked the teachers. Then she looked directly at Mira, who was sitting in the third row, still holding her violin on her lap. "Today," the principal said, "we were reminded that talent has no face, no clothes, no wealth. Talent lives in silence. It lives in effort. And sometimes it lives in a quiet girl who surprises the world." The hall clapped again. After the event, Mira was walking toward the school gate when Arav stopped her. His usual smile was gone. He looked nervous. "Hey," he said. I just wanted to say sorry. I didn't mean for things to go like that. We were just being stupid, but you were amazing." Mira looked at him calmly. "It's okay." She said, "I'm glad you signed me up." Then she walked away. Arav stood there, not knowing what else to say. At home that evening, Mira told her family everything. Her mother hugged her tightly. Her father, who usually said little, placed a hand on her head and said, "Today, he played not just music, he played your story, and people heard it." Her little brother, excited, ran outside and told all the neighbors, "My sister played." On stage, and everyone clapped for her. Mira slept peacefully that night, for the first time in a long time. The next morning at school, something strange happened. She was no longer invisible. Students who had never spoken to her now smiled when they saw her. Some came and sat with her during lunch. One girl asked if Mira could teach her how to play the violin. The teachers, too, looked at her differently. The music teacher spoke, too. Her after class and said, "Mira, I want to help you get better. You have real talent and you deserve proper training." She gave her the name of a local music academy and said she would talk to the principal about a scholarship for Mira. All this was new and surprising, but she stayed the same humble, soft-spoken girl. She continued her studies, helped her mother at home, and practiced her music every evening. Only now, her confidence was a little stronger. Her shoulders were a little straighter, and her dreams were a little bigger. That old broken violin, the one she bought for just 100, now had a new shine. It's not because the wood had changed, but because the hands that played it had discovered their worth. The school decided to send a few performers to a city-level inter-school competition, and Mira's name was on the top of the list. The principal herself submitted her entry and made sure she had everything she needed as she prepared for this new opportunity. Mira thought about how everything had started from a joke, a cruel prank, but instead of breaking her, it gave her the biggest chance of her life. Sometimes, even a wrong intention can lead to the right moment. What Arav and his friends meant to use as a weapon became her staircase. What they thought would make her cry made everyone else cry instead, because her music reached their hearts in a way words never could. She had walked into that performance alone, nervous, scared, and uncertain. But she walked out with respect, love, and a place in people's hearts. And all because she chose not to run away. She chose to stand, play, and be heard. A few weeks after the school talent show, Mira's life had started to change in small but powerful ways. She still lived in the same small house. She still wore the same simple clothes. Her violin was still old and scratched. But something inside her had shifted. She no longer walked with her head down. She no longer felt invisible. The first time in her life, people saw her not as a poor girl, not as someone to laugh at, but as someone with a gift. Everywhere she went in school, people greeted her with respect. Some students who had never even looked at her before now smiled and said hello. A few classmates even asked her to sit with them during lunch. Mira was surprised by all this attention, but she stayed humble. She didn't change her ways. Still sat on the back bench. She still helped clean the blackboard if the teacher asked. But now, there was a quiet strength in her that no one could deny. One day, during the lunch break, the music teacher called Mira to the staff room. At first, Mira felt nervous. She had never been inside the staff room before, and she wasn't sure why she was being called. But when she entered, the music teacher smiled and offered her a seat. There was another woman sitting beside her, someone Mira didn't recognize. She looked kind and professional, wearing a green sari and glasses. "Mira," the teacher began, "this is Mrs. Radhika Mehta. She works with the City School Music Association. She saw a video of your performance during our school event. Someone from the school staff recorded it and shared it with her." Mira looked at the woman in surprise. She had no idea someone had recorded her playing. Mrs. Mehta smiled warmly. "You play with a lot of heart," she said. "Your technique is raw, but your emotion is strong. That's very rare. I would like to offer you a chance to train at our academy. It's a special program for students who cannot afford private music lessons but have strong potential." Mira blinked, unsure if she had heard correctly. "You mean I can join a music class?" "Yes," Mrs. Mehta said. "Every Saturday and Sunday, all expenses will be covered. You just need to show up and give it your best." Mira looked at her teacher, who nodded and said, "You deserve this, Mira. We're all proud of you." Tears filled Mira's eyes. She folded her hands and said, "Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much." That evening, when she told her family the news, her mother hugged her tightly, wiping her tears with the edge of her dupatta. Her father, who had just returned from work, sat down and said nothing for a long moment. Then he quietly walked into the small corner where they kept their savings in a tin box and counted the coins and notes. "We'll find a way to buy you new strings," he said. "You can't walk into a music academy with broken ones." Her little brother jumped around the room with excitement. "Didi's going to music school. Didi's going to be famous." The next weekend, Mira went to the City Music Academy for the first time. She had never been to a place like that. It was filled with students carrying shiny instruments, dressed in clean uniforms. There were large halls with polished floors, framed photos of famous musicians on the walls, and a peaceful silence in the rooms where people practiced. At first, Mira felt out of place. Her violin looked like a poor cousin beside the polished instruments of the other students. Her clothes were old. She didn't have fancy shoes. Some students looked at her with curiosity, a few even with doubt. But the teachers welcomed her kindly and asked her to show what she could do. When she played her piece, the room slowly quieted. Even the students who had been whispering stopped to listen. Her music wasn't perfect. Her bow wobbled a little, and her posture wasn't correct. But her emotions, her passion, spoke louder than any mistake. After she finished, the music coach, a strict-looking man with silver hair, looked at her for a moment and said, "You don't play with training. You play with your soul. We'll take care of the training. Don't lose the soul." From that day on, Mira's weekends were spent in the music academy. She took 2 buses to reach the place, carrying her violin carefully, wearing her neatest clothes, Her father gave her a few coins each time, enough for travel and a small snack. She never complained about the long travel or the waiting. She knew this was a gift, and she treated it like one. At the academy, she learned about posture, finger movement, rhythm, and scales. The teachers helped her fix her hand position and taught her how to read music sheets. Slowly, her technique improved. But even as she learned the rules, she never lost her style. She continued to play from her heart, adding emotion to every note. One afternoon, while she was practicing in a quiet corner, a senior student named Ria walked by. Ria was one of the best violinists at the academy, known for winning competitions and performing in concerts. She stopped and listened to Mira for a while, then said, "You have something different in your music. Do you want to join me in a duet performance next month? There's a city-level student showcase, and I was looking for a partner." Mira's eyes widened. "Me? With you?" "Yes," Ria said. "You're good. And I think together we'll sound beautiful." Mira agreed, though her heart raced with nervousness. For the next few weeks, she practiced every day after school and all weekend at the academy. Ria helped her with timing, harmony, and coordination. At first, Mira found it difficult. She had always played alone. Playing with someone else required balance and understanding. But she was a fast learner, and Ria was patient. During this time, Mira's confidence grew stronger. She started standing straighter, speaking more clearly, and walking without fear. Her school teachers noticed it too. Her marks improved. She started answering questions in class. The girl who had once been laughed at was now being respected. As the city showcase approached, Mira's family worked together to support her. Her mother stitched a simple but beautiful kurta for her performance. Her father cleaned her violin case with an old cloth until it shone. Her little brother made a paper sign that read, "Mira Didi, best of luck." On the day of the performance, Mira stood behind the stage with Ria. The auditorium was large, filled with hundreds of people. Big lights, long curtains, and the sound of clapping echoed in the background. "You ready?" Ria asked. Mira took a deep breath. "Yes." When they walked on stage, the audience looked at them curiously. Most people didn't know who Mira was, but that didn't matter. As they began to play, the hall became quiet again. The music started slow, delicate, soft, like a flower blooming. Then it built up, full of emotion, powerful and strong. Ria's technique was sharp and graceful. Mira's feeling and depth added color to every note. Together, they created magic. When the performance ended, the hall clapped loudly, some even standing up. People asked who the second girl was, the one with the simple dress but unforgettable music. After the show, a man came up to Mira backstage. He introduced himself as a representative from a national music foundation. He gave her a card and said, "We organize music scholarships for young talents. I'd like you to apply. You have something rare." Mira couldn't believe her ears. Another opportunity had found her. That night, when she reached home and shared the news, her parents sat quietly, overwhelmed with emotion. Her mother said, "This is just the beginning. Your music is opening doors we never even knew existed." Mira nodded, holding her violin close. She had once been a girl who no one believed in, a girl chosen for a joke. But now, people were listening. You're listening. Her journey had started not with applause, but with laughter. And now, that laughter had turned into respect. And she had done it all not by shouting, not by proving herself with anger, but by playing the truth from her heart. The days after the city-level performance passed in a blur for Mira. Her life had changed so much. It had felt both new and familiar at the same time. The violin, which once was just a worn-out instrument, had now become her voice, her dream, and her future. When the representative from the National Music Foundation gave her that card, it opened a door she never thought possible. Mira decided to apply for the scholarship. It was a long process. She had to fill out forms, go for interviews, and even perform again in front of a panel of judges who were very serious and demanding. But Mira was not afraid. She remembered. All the time she had felt alone and invisible, and now she stood tall and proud. Her music was not just notes, it was her story, her strength, her hope. Her family supported her every step of the way. Her mother helped her prepare for interviews by asking questions and encouraging her to speak clearly. Her father took time off work to attend her performances and cheered the loudest. Her little brother, who was her biggest fan, drew pictures of violins and pasted them on the walls of their home. Finally, after weeks of waiting, Mira received a letter. She had won the scholarship. The letter said that she would receive full support to attend a prestigious music academy in the city, where she would learn from the best teachers and perform on big stages. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she read the letter over and over. It was hard to believe that a girl who had once been mocked for playing the violin was now being offered a chance to fulfill her dreams at school. Things changed again. Mira was no longer the quiet, poor girl at the back of the class. Teachers treated her with more respect. Some students asked for her advice on music. Even Arav, who had once mocked her, came and apologized properly. He said, "Mira, I was wrong. You're amazing. I'm sorry for what I did." Mira smiled and said, "It's okay. I'm just glad I got to show everyone what I can do." The school principal organized a small farewell ceremony for Mira before she left for the academy. She gave a short speech about how talent and determination could change lives. Mira was touched. For the first time, she felt truly recognized and appreciated. At the music academy, Mira's life became busy and challenging. She met students from all over the country, many of whom came from wealthy families and had trained since they were children. At times, Mira felt nervous and unsure. She struggled with the fast pace of the lessons and the complex music sheets, but she never gave up. She practiced every day, often late into the night. She asked questions, took extra lessons, and worked harder than anyone else. Her teachers noticed her dedication and called her a rising star. Slowly, Mira's skills improved. She learned new styles of music, from classical to modern, and began composing her own melodies. She performed in small concerts organized by the academy, and won praise each time. Her family was proud but missed her very much. Her mother cried during phone calls and asked Mira to take care of herself. Her father sent her small packages with homemade food and warm clothes. Her little brother sent drawings and letters telling her stories from home. Despite the distance, Mira stayed connected with her roots. She remembered the narrow lanes where she played as a child, the old violin that her father had fixed with care, and the faces of those who had laughed at her. Those memories became fuel for her determination. One day, the academy announced a national youth music competition. The winner would get a chance to perform at the National Concert Hall in the capital city, a dream stage for any musician. Mira decided to participate. She chose a piece she had composed herself. Inspired by her journey from a poor girl in a small town to a young musician chasing her dreams, on the day of the competition, Mira stood backstage, her heart pounding. The hall was huge, filled with hundreds of people, judges, musicians, and an audience eager to listen. She looked around and saw other contestants in sparkling dresses and fancy suits, carrying brand new violins. She felt a moment of fear. What if she wasn't good enough? What if people laughed again? But then she thought of all she had come through. All the nights spent practicing in silence, all the moments when she wanted to give up but didn't. She took a deep breath and reminded herself, this is your moment. When it was her turn, she walked onto the stage and stood in front of the microphone. The lights were bright, but she focused only on her violin. She closed her eyes and began to play. The music flowed from her like a river, soft, clear, full of passion and pain. She played the story of her childhood, the struggles of poverty, the joy of discovery, and the hope for a better future. The audience was silent, listening with tears in their eyes. As the last note faded, the hall erupted into applause. Mira opened her eyes and smiled shyly, bowing deeply. The judges whispered among themselves, clearly impressed. After the competition, Mira was called on stage again. The chief judge announced that she had won first place. The crowd cheered wildly. Heart soared. She had done it. She had shown the world that a poor girl from a small town could rise and shine. Her story was shared by newspapers and television. People were inspired by her courage and talent. Music schools invited her to give workshops. She received offers to record her own album, but through all the success, Mira stayed humble. She remembered where she came from and the people who helped her along the way. She used part of her prize money to buy a new violin, one that was beautiful and perfect. But she kept her old, worn violin too, as a symbol of her journey. She also started a small music class for children in her village, teaching those who could not afford lessons. She wanted to give others the same chance that she had been given. Her family celebrated her achievements, but reminded her to stay grounded. Her mother said, "Your music is your soul, Mira. Never forget that." Her father nodded. "And always remember, no matter how far you go, your roots will keep you strong." Mira smiled, knowing they were right. Years later, Mira became a famous violinist, performing in concerts all over the world. But she never forgot that day at school when a cruel joke became the beginning of her dream. She often spoke about it in interviews, encouraging young people not to give up, no matter what others say. Her story showed that talent and hard work can change everything. That sometimes the hardest moments can lead to the most beautiful beginnings. And that a poor girl with a broken violin can touch hearts and bring tears not from sadness, but from the power of her music.